What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. A sacred vow spoken before the altar, meant to symbolize an unbreakable bond. But in the chilling tale of white man charged in chilling church murders, 20 years later, karma hit hard. Those words become a haunting reminder of a love shattered by violence and betrayal. This is a story where the sanctuary of a church becomes a scene of unspeakable horror, where a husband's greed leads to a devastating act that will forever stain his soul. It's a tale of racial hatred, unforeseen consequences, and the chilling power of karma. What drove a man to commit such a heinous crime against an innocent couple? How did he escape justice for 20 years? And what fate awaits him now as the ghosts of his past return to seek their revenge? Welcome to Silicon Scribes. Prepare to be shocked, disturbed, and ultimately captivated by a story that explores the dark depths of human nature and the enduring consequences of our actions. Don't forget to subscribe to Silicon Scribes for more true crime stories that will send chills down your spine. And if you're ready to confront the horrors of the past, join us as we delve into the haunting case of white man charged in chilling church murders. 20 years later, karma hit hard. The church was silent except for the drip of blood echoing off the wooden pews. 2 bodies lay sprawled on the altar, their eyes staring blankly at the vaulted ceiling. A man, his face contorted in a mask of rage, stood over them, a smoking gun clutched in his hand. He was white. They were black. "This is what you get," he spat, his voice thick with hate. "This is what happens when you mess with my business." He turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the old floorboards. The church doors creaked shut behind him, leaving the dead couple alone in the sacred space. 20 years later, Thomas Winston, a successful businessman with a picture-perfect life, sat in his plush office, staring out the window. The city stretched out before him, a glittering expanse of steel and glass. He had everything a man could want: wealth, power, respect. But something was gnawing at him, a darkness lurking beneath his perfect life's surface. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched and followed. Strange things were happening, shadows moving in the corner of his eye, whispers in the wind, and a cold chill that seemed to follow him everywhere. He tried to ignore it, to tell himself it was just stress, but the feeling persisted. One night, as he lay in bed, unable to sleep, he heard a knock at the door. He got up, his heart pounding, and opened it. No one was there, but as he turned to go back inside, he saw it. A single word scrawled on the wall in what looked like blood: karma. Thomas jolted awake, his heart pounding like a drum. Sweat soaked his sheets, and the word karma burned into his mind's eye. He stumbled out of bed, the plush carpet cold beneath his feet. He flicked on the light, the sudden brightness momentarily blinding. He checked the wall, the hallway, and outside his bedroom door. Nothing. No bloody writing, no lurking shadows, just the sterile silence of his mansion. He told himself it was a nightmare, a trick of the mind. But deep down, a cold dread settled in his gut. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He poured himself a stiff drink, the amber liquid sloshing in the crystal glass. As he took a gulp, the burn of the alcohol did little to quell the rising panic. He thought back to that night 20 years ago. The church, the gun, the blood. He had tried to bury those memories, to lock them away in the deepest recesses of his mind. But now they were resurfacing, clawing their way back into the light. He remembered the couple, their faces etched with fear. He remembered the power he felt, the thrill of control. He had been young, arrogant, fueled by greed and a sense of invincibility. He had thought he could get away with it, that he was above the law. But now the law was coming for him. Not the kind with badges and handcuffs, but something far more sinister, something that whispered his name in the dead of night. He tried to distract himself, to lose himself in work, in the endless pursuit of wealth and power. But the fear lingered, a constant shadow that followed him everywhere. He started seeing things, hearing things, whispers in the crowd, faces in the dark, a cold touch on his skin when no one was there. He knew he needed help, but who could he turn to? Who would believe him? He was Thomas Winston, the successful businessman and the pillar of the community. No one would believe that he was being haunted by the ghosts of his past. One day, as he was driving home from work, he saw a figure standing on the side of the road. It was a woman dressed in black, her face obscured by a veil. She raised her hand and he slammed on the brakes, his car skidding to a halt. He got out, his heart pounding, and approached the woman cautiously. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice trembling. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, and a single Thomas woke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. A cold sweat clung to his skin, and a sense of dread washed over him. He tried to recall the nightmare, but the images were blurry, fleeting. All he could remember was a feeling of terror, of being pursued by a relentless force. He glanced at the clock on his bedside table. It was 3 a.m. He tried to go back to sleep, but his mind was racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something sinister. As the days passed, the strange occurrences became more frequent and disturbing. He heard footsteps in the hallway when no one was there. Objects moved of their own accord, and chilling whispers echoed through the house. He started seeing shadows in the corners of his vision, fleeting glimpses of figures that vanished as soon as he turned to look. One night, as he was working late in his office, he heard a tapping at the window. He looked up and saw a figure outside, its face obscured by the darkness. The figure raised a hand and pointed at him, a silent accusation. Fear gripped him, a cold, clammy fear that made his blood run cold. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. He was paralyzed, a helpless spectator, as the figure vanished into the night. He rushed to the window, but there was nothing there, just the empty street bathed in the dim glow of the streetlights. He tried to calm himself, to reason with himself, but the fear was too strong. He was convinced that something was out to get him, something from his past. He began researching the incident that had haunted his dreams for so long. He delved into old newspaper articles, police reports, and court transcripts. The more he learned, the more terrified he became. He realized that he had never truly faced the consequences of his actions. He had escaped justice, but now, justice was coming for him. He sought help from a therapist, a man with a kind face and a gentle voice. But even the therapist couldn't explain the strange phenomena plaguing Thomas. He suggested that it might be a manifestation of his guilt, a psychological defense mechanism to protect him from the truth. But Thomas knew better. He knew that something supernatural was at work, something dark and powerful. He was being haunted by the ghosts of his past, and they were determined to make him pay. The therapist's words echoed in Thomas's ears, manifestation of your guilt. But they offered little comfort. He knew this wasn't some figment of his imagination. This was real, a relentless torment that seeped into every corner of his life. Sleep became a battlefield where nightmares waged war on his sanity. He saw the couple, their lifeless eyes accusing him, their blood staining his hands. He'd wake up gasping for air, the sheets twisted around him like a shroud. Even in the waking hours, there was no escape. Whispers followed him down crowded streets. Faces seemed to morph into the accusing visages of his victims. He saw them in the reflection of shop windows, the swirling steam of his morning coffee, and even the flickering flames of his fireplace. His once pristine mansion became a prison of paranoia. Every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down his spine. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat. He jumped at the slightest noise, his nerves frayed to the breaking point. He tried to find solace in the routines of his life, the familiar comfort of his work. But even there, the haunting followed him. He'd be in the middle of a high-powered meeting, his mind focused on sealing a deal, when a cold chill would sweep over him, and he'd see their faces staring at him from across the boardroom table. His performance suffered, his sharp mind dulled by the constant fear and anxiety. Deals fell through, clients grew. Wary of his erratic behavior and whispers of instability began circulating in the business world. One evening, he found himself drawn to the old church. It had been abandoned for years, a decaying monument to his sin. He parked his car across the street, the engine idling, his headlights illuminating the dilapidated facade. He hesitated, fear battling with a morbid curiosity. A part of him wanted to run, to escape the memories that clung to that place like cobwebs. But another part, a darker, more compelling force, urged him closer. He stepped out of the car, the night air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. He walked towards the church, his footsteps echoing in the silence. As he reached the entrance, the heavy wooden doors creaked open as if inviting him in. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The interior was shrouded in darkness, the only light filtering through the broken, stained glass windows. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the faint moonlight. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he saw them. The couple stood at the altar, bathed in an ethereal light. Their faces were no longer contorted in fear, but serene, almost peaceful. They turned to look at him, and a voice, soft as a whisper, echoed through the church. "It's time, Thomas." The church air hung heavy with the weight of the past. Thomas stood frozen, his breath catching in his throat. The couple bathed in an otherworldly glow and looked at him with an unsettling mix of sadness and resolve. He wanted to scream, to run, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. "We've been waiting for you, Thomas," the woman said, her voice echoing through the empty church. It wasn't accusatory, but filled with a weary acceptance. "Why?" Thomas croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" The man stepped forward, his form shimmering like a heat haze. "You took our lives, Thomas. You took our future. You left us here, trapped in this place, consumed by your violence. I didn't... Do you mean to?" Thomas stammered, the words feeling hollow even to his ears. "It was a mistake. I was young, greedy." "Mistakes have consequences, Thomas," the woman said, her voice growing stronger. "And now it's time for you to face yours." The church around them began to change. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows deepening, the air growing thick and suffocating. Fear, raw and primal, gripped Thomas. He stumbled back, his hands outstretched, trying to find something solid to hold on to. The couple advanced, their forms becoming more distinct, their faces etched with the pain he had inflicted. He could see the bullet wounds, the blood staining their clothes, the terror in their eyes. "No! Stay back!" he cried, his voice cracking. "Please, I am sorry, I will do anything." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. They were upon him, their touch icy cold, their eyes burning into his soul. He felt a searing pain, not physical, but something deeper, tearing at his very essence. He screamed, the sound echoing through the church, a desperate cry for salvation that would never come. The world around him dissolved into a swirling vortex of darkness, the faces of his victims the last thing he saw. Then, silence. The church stood empty. The only sound was the creaking of the old wooden doors as they swung shut. The night swallowed the building whole, leaving no trace of the reckoning that had taken place within. Thomas Winston, the man who thought he could escape his past, was gone. Consumed by the karma he had created, he became another ghost trapped within the walls of the old church, forever bound to the scene of his crime. The echoes of his violence would linger, a chilling reminder that justice, even if delayed, will always find its way. News of Thomas Winston's vanishing act spread through the town like wildfire. One day, he was an esteemed businessman. The next, he was gone. Whispers turned into rumors, and rumors escalated into full-blown conspiracy theories. The police, baffled by the lack of evidence and the strange circumstances, launched an investigation. Detectives combed through Thomas's mansion, office, and even the abandoned church, but found nothing to explain his disappearance. Meanwhile, a young, ambitious reporter named Sarah caught wind of the story. Intrigued by the mystery and sensing a career-making scoop, she began her investigation. She interviewed Thomas's colleagues, friends, and family, piecing together a picture of a man haunted by his past. Sarah was particularly drawn to the old church. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, claiming it was cursed, haunted by the spirits of those who had died there. She felt a chill as she stepped inside, the air heavy with a sense of sorrow and lingering violence. As she delved deeper into Thomas's past, she uncovered a dark secret, a crime buried for 20 years. She found old newspaper clippings about the murder of a black couple in that very church, a case that had gone cold. The description of the killer, a young white man filled with rage, sent a shiver down her spine. Could Thomas Winston be the murderer? The pieces started to fall into place. The timing, the strange occurrences leading up to his disappearance, the haunted church. It all pointed to a man consumed by guilt and facing a reckoning beyond the reach of the law. Sarah, determined to uncover the truth, dug deeper, following a trail of clues that led her to Thomas's hidden journals. In those pages, she found a confession, a chilling account of the night he took 2 innocent lives. With this newfound evidence, Sarah was ready to expose Thomas's dark secret and bring justice to the forgotten victims. But she soon realized she had stumbled upon something far more sinister than she could have imagined. The forces that had consumed Thomas were still at work, and they had a new target: her. Sarah felt a shiver crawl down her spine as she read the final entry in Thomas's journal. His confession was chilling, filled with a chilling lack of remorse. He described the murder in detail, the thrill of power, the satisfaction of revenge. It was the writing of a monster. She closed the journal, her hands trembling. She had her story, the evidence she needed to expose Thomas Winston and bring closure to the families of his victims. But a sense of unease lingered, a feeling that she had stepped into something far deeper and more dangerous than a simple news story. The sun was setting as she left the library, casting long shadows across the street. She felt a chill, a sense of being watched. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest. Reaching her car, she fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking. She glanced over her shoulder, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the empty street and the gathering darkness. She entered the car, locked the doors, and started the engine. As she pulled away from the curb, she saw a figure standing in the middle of the road, bathed in the glow of her headlights. It was a woman dressed in black, her face obscured by a veil. Sarah slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. The woman stepped closer, her form shimmering in the fading light. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the woman from Thomas's journal as one of the victims. The woman raised her hand, and Sarah saw a word on her forehead: Karma. Panic seized Sarah. She tried to reverse, to escape, but the car wouldn't move. The woman's face came closer, her eyes burning with an icy fire. Sarah screamed, the sound trapped in her throat. The world around her dissolved into a swirling vortex of darkness. She felt a cold hand on her arm, and a voice whispered in her ear, "You're one of us now." The next morning, Sarah's car was abandoned on a deserted road. The doors were locked and the engine was still running. There was no sign of a struggle, no clue as to what had happened. Sarah, like Thomas before her, had vanished without a trace. The ghosts of Holloway had claimed another victim. Their thirst for justice, twisted by years of pain and anger, had consumed them, turning them into the very thing they sought to avenge. And as the shadows lengthened over the town, the whispers grew louder. carrying a chilling warning. No one who dared to uncover the truth would escape the echoes of the past. The echoes of Thomas Winston's crimes faded into the whispers of Holloway's history. Once a place of worship and sanctuary, the church remained abandoned, a silent monument to the darkness that had consumed it. Sarah's disappearance added another layer to the town's grim folklore, a chilling reminder of the price of seeking the truth. But even in the face of tragedy, there was a glimmer of hope. The story of Thomas Winston and his victims served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, has a way of finding its balance. What are your thoughts on the chilling tale of karma's reckoning? Did Thomas Winston pay the ultimate price for his sins? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you found this video captivating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling stories. Until next time, stay curious, but beware the shadows, for you never know what lurks within.